Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining. I'm Michelle Johnson, the marketing specialist here at ProcessMaker. Today's webinar is part of our Innovation in Banking series. The series will cover relevant topics around digital transformation and the technological innovation in banking driving it. In today's webinar, we will discuss how you can streamline commercial account opening at your financial institution and delight customers while having an impact on operational excellence. Today's speakers are Chuck Wakocha and Meredith Little. Chuck leads the banking solutions team here at ProcessMaker. He's a thought leader and he brings 10 plus years of experience in Fintech. Meredith leads the banking sales team. She's a results-driven problem solver driving market growth at ProcessMaker. ProcessMaker is an award-winning solutions provider focused on community banking and account opening. It is extremely rewarding to know that the meticulous development of tools and solutions that ProcessMaker has developed is recognized by those who we serve, such as Best Digital Process Automation Solution and Design Workflow Management System of the Year. Among the highlights in the numerous awards, easiest to use, easiest to set up, and users most likely to recommend. While it may seem like what is now called a humble brag to talk about the recognition, it actually comes from a place of humility. At ProcessMaker, we have an obsessive focus on serving the customer, you, the financial institutions. Our mission is to make it easy to automate complex business processes, and that starts and ends with you in mind. Now I would like to introduce to you Chuck.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. I appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for joining today as we're looking at digital transformation and how that dovetails into digital account opening. You know, what it really boils down to is that digital transformation is inevitable, right? And the future of community banking lies in appropriately leveraging technology.
All right. So Chuck, I think it's time as we get started today to have an informal poll. So on your screen, you'll see three options of who is leading or who has led digital transformation at your institution. A, your bank president, B, your CTO, or C, COVID-19.
And I think we get an idea of what that typically is, huh, Meredith?
I think so. Absolutely. So regardless of who is driving the digital transformation, the COVID-19 environment has certainly accelerated the need for automation and digitization. The majority of financial institutions we talk to view the accelerated transition to a digital society and economy as vital following the COVID-19 pandemic. You may be starting your digital transformation journey, and that's okay. You're not alone in that. Different institutions are at different stages in this journey. But if you've not started, now's the time to start and to catch up with your peers. So let us actually define what digital transformation is and why it matters.
You know, digital transformation really, it's a reimagining of the client proposition, right? Digital transformation is the newest buzzword or phrase, but few financial institutions truly understand what that means, especially for their particular institution. Now, digital transformation is not just about technology. It also involves change management, procedural, structural, and personnel changes that go along with it. Innovation requires strategic decision-making and not just the acquisition of the so-called best-in-breed tools. You know, challenges often involve the integration of the multiple products from multiple vendors into a cohesive workflow. As a result, many organizations are a little bit hesitant in adopting new technologies, and thus they struggle to meet the demands of today, and especially the high expectations of the customer. And so what that really kind of comes down to is that, or what's really driving the change is the expectations of the customer. And when you think about the expectations and what drives the adoption of new technologies or new fintech solutions, two things, you know, in this: easy to set up an account, right? So the ease of use, that customer experience, and that better online experience and functionality. So those two things account for 50%, over half of the reasons why folks move into a new direction. And so thanks to the behavior of the customer, you know, this pushes, the adoption of technology, the innovation along. And in the smartphone and always online culture that we live in today, that expectation and behavior of the customers has fundamentally changed. As we look at it, we are in the digital age, in the information age. That means the industrial age is over. People can not only access the information and data that they previously had not been able to, but they can do so anywhere and anytime. So with banking, that means not just checking your account online for balances and pieces of information. People now expect to handle all of their financial affairs as easily and as conveniently as they do checking their emails or social media accounts.
So really, Chuck, what you're saying is that banks just ultimately have to rethink how they're engaging with their clients and customers.
Yeah, and that's correct. We are witnessing, true innovation, not just with the advent of blockchain and Bitcoin, the peer-to-peer financial platforms like Cash App and Venmo, but the overall shift towards doing everything quickly and efficiently online. And for banks, that also means with less fees and interference, right? So, what this comes down to, I mentioned customer experience. That is what is driving everything. But that disintermediation is also a part of it. So the disintermediation of traditional business models. So I may go to this app, I may go to this tool for this portion of the function. But in all of that, how I experience this is what's driving it. And so when you think about where banking sits over the course of human civilization as the means of exchange, the need for invention of money to transact over distance over time, with banks sitting as the central piece in that facilitation, the disintermediation of that has fundamentally, changed the way we think about this. So while the bank still remains as the core piece of the financial engine, it is no longer the center of the financial lives of our consumers.
Hey, Chuck.
Yeah.
What is disintermediation? Is that the reduction in the use of middle people to between the producers and consumers, so intermediaries? Are you just saying that you're cutting out the middleman?
Yeah, basically, and allow me for the SAT words in this, but yeah, essentially we're cutting out the middleman, right? Consumers want to get to what they need very easily, very efficiently. That experience needs to be seamless, and that again, when we're thinking about transformation, the lines between financial services and the technology that delivers those, that is being blurred significantly. And when we think about fintech, right, the idea that fintech is going to disrupt banks, that has been misconstrued a bit, right? The disruption lies in pushing change, right? The transformation of it, not necessarily in the displacement or the destruction. Rather, banks have to adopt or view fintech as tools to sharpen operational efficiency, to lower costs, to improve that customer experience, and to heighten the appeal of the products and services that they deliver.
All right. So you can see, for those of you on the line today, this quote up here from Jay Blanford, who's the president of Abrigo, and it really speaks to where financial institutions are today. So community financial institutions are always looking for innovative ways to become more digital and efficient without losing the human personal touch they're known for.
So, we are looking at this, right, as community banks, the touch point that we have, the community feel, right? We're embedded, we have that personal touch. So we're not going to lose that. We're not going to lose the things that we do very well, but we must learn how to leverage technology to continue to deliver that, right? So banks must use technology to grow those efficiencies, right? To lower those costs, but also to better deliver those services and the products, and obviously reducing costs and risk in the meantime. And that is meeting customers where they are. So, in this, the rise of technology in our everyday banking activities is changing the way we bank, right, Meredith? And as we adjust to the fast and evolving and dynamic environment, that can be tough for most banks.
It can, absolutely. And so what we need to do is understand what changes are happening and how to adjust to them, as that can be challenging as well. And so with all solution providers hawking this and that and best in class solution, that can be overwhelming.
So, this is part of a series as part of our innovation and banking series. We'll cover some key areas, notably today with the account opening, as part of these adoption of technology, as part of the way that we're going to deliver. The other areas we'll look at loan origination, we'll look at workflows, right? Designing, and we talked about that transformation, the people, the processes, and the technology, all right, in those the connection of each of those pieces into a cohesive workflow. The many tools that are involved, the integration of all of those things in our toolkit in delivering that, and then of course being able to understand what we're doing, what's happening through the reporting, through the analytics. So through our innovation and banking series, we'll be looking at each of those areas, and today we'll be focusing on the account opening segment of it. While we're able to deliver all those other elements, it's important at the very start of that value chain, the opening of the account, that the experience is seamless, that the experience is on par with the customer's expectations. So, the omni-channel approach is, one of the areas that we really talk about. Whichever direction or however the customer is looking to connect with us, we need to be able to provide a great pathway for that. So in an online world, whether they are sitting at a desktop or a laptop or via the tablet or the mobile phone, being able to move from an analog to a digital process, it requires the omni-channel being optimized for that. So when we think about the account the online account opening process, how it traditionally has been in the banks, this has really been a very inefficient process. It involves, very multiple persons in different business units, multiple things from the account printing, the different segments in each of those, and it can be very efficient and is very error prone due to its manual nature. And so you are then pulling data from multiple vendors through different software. And again, we'll talk about integration in another session, but trying to pull all those together can lead to a very frustrating experience, not only internally for our staff who are trying to deliver this great service, but obviously from our customers who are trying to delight and take care of that. So the idea behind this is to be able to deliver that analog process, that frustrating siloed, disjointed process in a streamlined flow. When you're looking at an account opening, that starts with the initial request. So if they're going online, the gathering of the documents that we require for this, the delivery and the selection of the products, including treasury service, cash management services, the acceptance of this information through the signatures, through the through the terms and conditions that the customers are looking at, and then underneath the back end stuff that is driving this. We want to know who the customers are when they're in person. Yes, we can see them. We know who they are, but when they're across the screen, whether it's the phone or the computer, we need to be able to verify that. So the ID verification stuff, ID authentication information is absolutely important. And then, of course, being able to review that information and validate. Sometimes we'll need someone's eyeballs on those. And then, of course, once they finish that, being able to transfer that into our systems of record and boarding to the core. And then, of course, an account is no good without money. So being able to fund those when they come in person, we're able to take cash or check right there to the teller. But when they're not there in person, when we're doing this digitally, how do we fund? If they have an existing relationship with us, do we drive that from an existing account that they have with us? If we're going to fund that through ACH, or even if we're going to fund that from an external account at another institution, how do we drive that? And then, of course, in finalizing the repository of information to do all this. And each of these nodes in the value chain requires, or the use of some system or some tools in those in that process. And I like to think of the commercial account opening, in four pillars. That's that information and document gathering. We need a lot of bits of information from this. A commercial account is a little bit more complex than the retail, where the retail, we're just really trying to find out who that person is and then go into funding. But in validating for a commercial account, we need quite a bit more information. Then we're able to offer the services and products that they require or that they need to conduct business. The ability to provide additional levels of engagement, marketing things from, just the selection of the checking accounts that they may need to maybe offering of credit cards, and again, cash management services to allow our businesses to function well and to provide that. And then again, behind that, verifying who those persons are. They are not in front of us, so we need to do our due diligence. We've gone from the customer due diligence to the enhanced due diligence, right? So we need to know our customers. We need to know our businesses. How do we verify and validate that? Once we've completed that, the last mile in that journey, funding the account, the money that needs to get in to start, and then onboarding to the core appropriately. So when we think about that, we have to think about each of these things in the stream, in this ecosystem. One of the great things in this is being able to, or really to optimize this, means that we have to connect these various systems. So when we do our next series, or the series on integration, we'll talk about this and what that actually means. But in this, what I wanted to highlight is, no matter where you're coming from, what you have for your core, what you're utilizing for your loan origination, for your underwriting systems, your KYC, your IDV tools, the document storage and compliance information, the signatures, and again, that funding piece, being able to connect those into that streamlined, efficient workflow. So, from the integration, there's and that can be a little bit more technical, but it's really being able to bring all these together. So on the front end with our customers, they see a very seamless and great customer experience. The user experience is great. And obviously on the back end, where it used to be, we may have to go down the hall to get this person to do this or to sign off, or to go to another branch to finish some of these things, we're able to provide that in a great back end process. So, when we look at this, and Meredith, let me ask you, when we've talked to banks here, there's usually a question of how they start. Like some institutions will indicate, they may want to have this a little bit, I guess, hold this process a little bit closer to their heart, or they may give a lot more to the customers to complete.
Yeah.
What has been your experience in that?
Yeah, right. So, Chuck, you're absolutely right. Every financial institution makes the best business decision for them. But the clients that we've talked to, there are some who like to put this right away up on their website and have the link there for their clients to easily access. But then they're on the flip side of that, probably the other 50% or more are, doing what I refer to as a slow rollout. This is new for everybody. My husband's company, they still pay on a paper check. So, this digitization of banking is new for everybody, everywhere. So, there are banks that will, hold on to this and let the relationship managers or the lenders send out the secure portal. And then there are some that, still want to know who they're doing business with. So they will utilize ProcessMaker in branch, whether it's on an iPad, a laptop, a tablet, whatever they are presently using.
And that's exactly right? That omni-channel process, not only for the customer, but also from the bank. There's that hybrid approach, right? As we go through a transformation, it is hard to just completely overhaul everything, right? So a hybrid approach can be very important to obviously moving our folks over to this, but in transitioning, it requires that change. And I think about when I had a goldfish, at least the first one, I killed it when I tried to change out the entire water at once, right? There's a shock to the system that happens when you don't properly plan for that transition. So the hybrid approach tends to be the best way that folks go into that. And again, that can be providing the appropriately sophisticated folks the ability to move through a very seamless self-service process, or a more high touch hand holding process, or the hybrid approach in between. And so when we look at this and when we talk about how this process goes from a consulting approach, we look at what is best for the institution and how they go about that. And in that journey, we try to map out what that looks like. And we try to help them define what that journey should look like for their customers. So that means identifying who they are, right? If they're an existing customer, what does that look like? If they're a net new customer, how do they approach this? So do they start by accessing it directly from the website, or is it initiated by a banker who would then provide a secure link or a secure, uh, um, you know, uh, path for that customer to go in? So it creates a multiple way to approach this, and then those things that are mutually exclusive, right? So looking at, we may want to start with our toes in the water with driving this from a banker initiated process, but we can then move forward to a more self-service driven portion of it. And then once they get started in completing the application, it's asking for the necessary information and going through that. And one of the things I like to highlight in this is, we keep going back to that customer experience. That really matters, right?
Mhm.
The nuances from the use of white space visually, these things, it may seem, and it is very polished, but it may seem like well, take it, a lot of work and a lot of thought has gone into every little spot in this. So managing expectations, an example I like to use is, I worked at Six Flags at one of my early jobs at 15 and a half. And in some of those lines for the rides, you could be in a line for 2 hours, but people get in line and they stay for 2 hours, and that's because their expectations are managed. When they get in there, there's a sign that says from this point is 2 hours, from this point is 25 minutes, from this point is 10 minutes. If they were in line for only 10 minutes, but with no expectations of what that looks like, that actually can be quite a bit more frustrating than those who are in line for much longer, but at least with that expectation. So in driving the customer experience, these are the kinds of things you see in the design and the design elements of that. So understanding what that looks like. I want to create a profile, identifying who I am. I want to complete the application, the necessary documents and information in this. And then in the last mile, finalizing, for the bank side here, boarding to the account, for the customer here, funding the account. And so that's what it looks like. And managing that journey starts with that, the profile, the application. And as they go through, you'll see the metrics that kind of let them know how far they are along in that process. And so those three general areas really account for that customer experience. Who am I? What do I need? What products am I selecting? And then in finalizing, here's the account information that I need to complete that. So when we think about that design, they, and pardon this analogy, they say you can eat an elephant as long as you take it one bite at a time. And this process, while the complexities are there in terms of what we need, the customer experience is actually pretty smooth, pretty straightforward, and pretty seamless. So in this, in looking at this, I imagine what this experience should look like for me as a customer. So the basic pieces that I'm looking for are, who am I, my name, email, and phone number. That, whether you're signing up for a gift card or drawing at the mall, those are the basic pieces of information that you're looking for. And how do you want to communicate to that person? So then from there, once we set up our credentials, we're able to move forward into driving this. So from a customer standpoint, as they're driving this, again, as you look at this, while I may be looking at this as a self-service, I consider myself sophisticated enough to move this along. I still want to have the ability to reach out and touch someone. Any of those
Mhm.
of us old enough to remember that tagline from was it AT&T, Meredith, right?
I
Reach out and
think,
touch.
yeah, I think so. And I will say, I mean, that's something that, is so important to, we've mentioned this before, but community banks is having the ability to interface with their clients. That's what sets you all apart. And so, as you can see here, you have the ability to reach out and touch someone.
Yeah. And so even if I may not need it, knowing that it's there and it's accessible. So in the case that it is, I'll be able to do that. Right. Also on the back end of things, I mentioned the banker side of it. So as I am looking at that from a banker standpoint, I also have the ability to walk in parallel, behind the veil for the customer. So if they are able to reach out and ask or have questions or need assistance, I am able to jump in there right there with them. This omni-channel approach also means that this same process that the customer is following is the same process that I as a banker would be doing
Mhm.
if I was to complete this for him or her.
Yep.
Right. So if Meredith was to walk into the bank in person and sits down across from me, this will be the same process that we would be utilizing.
Mhm. Yep.
Uh, and some institutions are also looking at additional areas, and I don't want to overuse the word innovate, but a little bit of iteration and tweaking. Again, thinking about how they deliver things. ITMs have become a regular part of how folks engage. Again, thinking about last year, branches were closed, so you saw that a lot more. Institutions are pre-pandemic were utilizing this, and what that would entail is being able to schedule someone. So I may not have the resources to have 24/7 coverage or someone available, but I can also set in a scheduler and say, hey, 15 minutes from now, an hour from now, let me set up a time to talk with someone. So this gives an ability to do that. Or again, that ITM, I can pull in and dial in and have access to the persons who can assist me in this process. Now, as they move forward through the process, the document gathering portions of it is really looking at the business, right? Identifying what we are looking for and who they are. So when I put my business there, I can select my different structures. And the intelligence behind this is each question, each subsequent input of information will also drive the directional and the dependent information requests later on. So as I'm identifying the type of business structure that I have, if it's an S corp, if it's an LLC, if it's an estate, the requested the intelligence will drive the request of information. So the articles of organization necessary for an LLC versus the incorporation docs for a C corp. As we go then through identifying more information for the business, often there are ways to drive engagement. So in this, I'm sorry, go ahead, Meredith.
Well, I was just going to ask a question, Chuck. So let's say I own a business on my own. Is it going to intuitively know that I don't need to funnel through a bunch of questions that are related to various corporations?
Absolutely, right. So when we make those selections, when we design the workflow behind it, it will indicate, where we go next on this. So if I am a sole proprietorship, a single member LLC, right, these things will drive those. So when I define if I'm a business and there's only one person involved, right? So that is a single member LLC. Or if I am a business with multiple persons, and that appropriate structure that goes behind it. Again, in the design of these, it's important to for those customers to be able to experience this as intuitively as we would behind talking to a person as they have traditionally done. And then there are also things like this. For example, you're starting to see more institutions expand their offerings to the cannabis industry, for example, right? In that there are certain requirements based on the types of businesses that they're engaged in. Even in the cannabis in general, there's just more requirements and more disclosures that are going there. But also within that, whether you're a dispensary or manufacturer or even a real estate company that's providing the facilities for those. So for institutions being able to direct those appropriately, that helps them drive the process in this. So complexities of the commercial means that there could be multiple people in there, right? There, not just the single member LLC that we talked about, Meredith, but I could have 6, 7 people that are part of my business. But even within that, I may only want 2 or 3 of them to be signers or to be actively involved. So while we can map out all the persons involved, I may need to just identify that multiple, the 3 or 4 persons here, Matt Murdoch, for example, could be my partner, and I will want him to be a signer as he owns significant portions of the business. I may want to add my CPA who will provide additional information, but will not have access to the banking account and will not be a signer. But in those, again, in that complexity and the permutation of relationships in that, being able to identify who those are. And, again, as we're going through this, there are elements that seem like it may be, well, again, the complexity of it is there, but the user access, the ease of use and the flow of it is actually well laid out and well structured. So mapping out those business owners, those beneficial partners, then I identify who they are, identify who's going to be a signer, and being able to deliver those. And again, where there may be 5 people involved, if they were in person, it's hard enough to get people to all come to this, to the time together, right? And even as a business owner, I may spend all my time trying to actually run my business, and it may not be as convenient to have all the people at once. So that may mean sending out information requests to the various members of this organization. So if they're not present, we'll be able to send them the same secure link and the same secure process to be able to acquire that information. And talking to institutions, Mary, I think we've had this conversation. This can be a huge bottleneck in the process.
Mhm.
From what if everybody's here, we could get this done in 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
And if not, what is it? What does that often look like?
Can take weeks. I mean, you're having to track down and gather the information. So it can really lend to itself to be a really big bottleneck.
And then also, even behind that, right, where we can manage and track those, I can look at this as a banker from my dashboard. There are 5 members of this organization, and I have different pieces on that of the required documents. So I can push and reach out and connect directly. So to erase that bottleneck or to move things along, not just going down the hall and asking, "Hey Meredith, did Matt Murdoch send in his required documents?" and having to do that process. So again, the efficiencies that are created,
Mhm.
through this, and we are able, Meredith and I are both able to see through our dashboard where we are. I can send an email to Matt, a reminder, a push notification. Again, these things can be automated. So after, 48 hours, we still haven't gotten Matt's information, an automatic trigger that goes out and says,
Yeah.
"Hey, Mr. Murdoch, we need this additional information, or do you need assistance, etc." So, something very easily, Matt follows that link and is able to provide his information. And then as we go through, being able to then add him, through the appropriate areas. So when there's choosing and selecting their products, we're able to provide and identify, in this account, we're going to have multiple signers. In that account, we'll only have one signer. So as they go through the process, being able to easily flow and drive the selection of products, the selection of tools. In a simplified process we're looking at here, we're making some simple selections, but we can add additional things of engagement. If we wanted to identify certain products, right, we can add debit cards, we can add credit cards, and giving them the ability to make that selection. Additionally, we talked about some of those intelligent drivers, right? So some customers in different parts of the state, different countries, I mean, different counties, excuse me, right? We may be offering different products to them, or based on other characteristics, we can intelligently offer and provide a different view based on those. So, some institutions, I was talking to an institution earlier today, and they're based in Pennsylvania, but they also have presence in New Jersey and New York. And what they offer in those areas are a little bit different. So after we get through and offer that, it's identifying the persons involved, right? The things that validate those, the identification documents, driver's license, the passports if we need that, the tax information, property information, utility to validate and verify who those people are. And on the back end of that is the verification systems that are already running. So once we start inputting information, that stuff is happening, and we're able to validate those persons we're able to validate the businesses in that the request of the documents from those. And, from there, I mentioned the structural determination of that, right? So if they selected an S Corp, it will be relevant to what we require in the S Corp. So as we move through those, then it's accepting the terms and conditions for this. Meredith, I know if it's like me, if you're like me, it can be a little bit of an eyesore to try to read
Oh, yeah.
everything in that. But so how, one of the things that we then try to do is make it necessary that they actually read it, right? Or actually,
Scroll down.
yeah, exactly, right? Before they get the acceptance of it, you force them to, for our due diligence, right? We're in a enhanced due diligence state, the compliance things that we need to make sure that we satisfy there. And then from there, they can confirm that they have accepted and read or pretend to have read those things, and we cover ourselves there. And then, of course, in accepting that, we get the signatures necessary for it. And from there, we then move on. And I kind of talk through this, and even in talking through this, if I was keying in this, you can see how seamless and easy that stuff is. So if I have all my information, within 10-15 minutes, I've proven everything that I needed here. I've submitted the information, and it's ready to approve. And if necessary, um, additional intervention that may be needed there, we can go in as a banker and review and validate that. Or if it meets all the check boxes, there are no red flags or things to look at, we can move right through the approval statement segment of it and automatically add the approval and get ready to accept, to board to the core, and to fund it.
Yep.
So, when you look at that, Meredith, one of the things we talk about with innovation, harkening back to that ecosystem, is the things that folks are utilizing in in their suite. And
Mhm.
an area that excites me a little bit, and I mentioned this, was with the funding tools like
Mhm.
Plaid and Dwala. I have friends now who pretty much they're doing everything through a Cash App, through Venmo. We go out for a meal and splitting the check on this. And what that does is allow folks to exchange, right? So for a bank, this creates another mechanism to accept and to fund, right? So we
Mhm.
can in person have the person who walks up to the teller with a cash with a with cash or with a check and fund it, or through ACH. But tools like this allow additional methods of remittance. And let me ask you, Meredith, do you prefer Cash App or do you prefer Venmo?
I'm a Venmo gal, so
Venmo.
I don't even know what Cash App is. You mentioned it the other day and I had to Google it. So,
Well, it's a lot of the same thing, right? And what that means is, for the bank, it's how do we access this, and how do we get that last mile? Companies like Amazon are really, really hone in on that last mile. They
mhm.
can do all the things that do right, but that last portion of it, in getting the funding, some institutions I've talked to have gotten to this part where, because digitally they have not created all the mechanisms, all the available mechanisms, that the accounts are languid and waiting to actually get funded. And sometimes, there's a 30-day window to get funded, but this shortens that window to get to that. So, so when we then look at everything that's happening behind it, this is just a way to understand the activities and the transactions that are behind that. All the activities can be generated through a report, right? We're able to look at, from a bigger picture, top down standpoint, how each branch is operating, how each individual or each unit within the branch is operating. From an individual standpoint, the workflows, I mentioned I am overseeing some of these account openings, and I can understand where each person is in any given point, and being able to seamlessly manage that value chain and being able to see that. Again, from our regulatory and compliance standpoint, we have all the stuff that is managing that, but from an actual operational and efficiency standpoint, we're also able to deliver those as well. So when we look at the way to manage that process, it's important to be able to visually understand what's happening with that.
And Chuck, with the reporting and the charting, is that something that can be defined based upon the banker's persona within the bank? You know, if it's a high level senior administrator, they might want to see, you know, an overview of every relationship manager or banker, but, you know, I may just be interested in what's going on in my book of business. Are we able to set parameters for that?
Absolutely. All right. So when we think about the stuff I need to see when I check in the morning, I need to be able to understand what's relevant for me, what's relevant for my team, But as a team leader, I need to be able to see the things that are important and happening overall as a team as well. So and also access levels, right? There are some folks we may want to partition out. So being able to configure that appropriately from access levels, from units, from those business units as well. We look at each institution and the way they operate and the value or the chain that goes through those. And, also thinking about the structures of institutions, how a $250 million institution operates is a little bit different than how a $5 billion institution operates. So being able to configure appropriately for that is essential to really delivering this well for them. So then when we think about the complexity of the commercial account opening, the retail side, the consumer side is fairly easy and straightforward. While it may not require all the uh, documents and things there, it's important to provide the same level of thought into the design, into the experience. And for the retail side, for the consumer side, it's a much shorter and much quicker ramp to getting an account opening. Where the commercial may take up to 15 minutes. If I have my stuff, or if I need to add additional pieces in there. From the product selection through the treasury selection and onboarding portion of it, from the personal side, I can get in and out of this in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? Because what it's asking for is primarily to validate the person who is completing this or who is filling this out is, who I say I am. So we get in, we fill out, our basic pieces of information. We validate it through our submission of disclosures, ID, et cetera. And while that's happening, the verification of that identity starts immediately, and then we get to funding. So, very quickly, what do I want to do today? I want to open up an account. I'm selecting a checking account. It will be a single account, not a joint, and there will be no other beneficiaries on this. And I complete that initial portion of it. Then the acceptance of the disclosures, verifying the identity, and we fund it. And that pretty much ramps it up again to completion there. So tell me about yourself, the basic information that we provide. And you see some of this too in once I start putting in the information, it's already feeding into the ID stuff there. Once I upload my driver's license, the OCR that's reading and looking at that information to validate that this stuff is accurate, right? And then from there, it's pretty much set and go. There are no further questions that are required for this. I accept the terms and conditions for this. I sign it, and I get my information. The email says we're ready to go, and the last IDV portion of it takes a biometric, and this is, and let me be clear, this is one of multiple mechanisms in which we can validate this, but I can from my computer here validate the ID information that I provided. So I uploaded that and scanning it. So now it'll take the picture and say this is actually Chuck. Or if I'm doing this from a mobile phone, I can complete the same information and the same process there. And as we go through that, again, very in a time frame standpoint, that first section took about a minute, This other section, again, we're taking, validating it. The process is almost instantaneously happening while we take the picture, and it validates who I am. And, my information is redacted to protect the innocent. And that's assuming that I'm, the innocent, right, Meredith?
Exactly.
Right. So in that, and that's a picture of me, before I take, I've taken my 2 cups of morning coffee. But it's the same look that I had when I was at the DMV itself. No one has fun time at the DMV. And so when you're thinking about this innovation, really at the heart of it is streamlining the process. We are transferring a once analog process into a digital flow, right? But without losing the things that make us great, without losing the touch, without losing, the security, but being able to deliver that customer experience that is essential to driving this is really done and completed without any bumps, without any hiccups in this. But
Mhm.
internally, for our banks, the staff that's doing this, we're taking those siloed processes, those siloed data, in that disjointed flow of things, and connecting it into a straight and seamless flow. And then again, the reporting behind it, the compliance, and all the information that's behind this. This is what innovation looks like from an account
Mhm.
opening process. We can no longer sit back and say, well, we want to do that, or we may think about doing that. This is happening. And
This is the
even,
future.
yeah, and even unfortunately, Meredith, you and I were talking about our kids returning back to school. My
Yeah.
kids are going back next week.
Yep.
But the way things are looking, we may be looking at additional, curtailment of how we engage personally, right? We may be going back to a virtual learning as well, just depending on how things go, which also means same thing for banks, right? We may be having restricted hours, restricted access to our in our branch offering,
Mhm.
and that is really looking at and talking about the laggards, but the future of the innovation, the way things are, the way customers are uh, um, engaging requires the digital engagement. And I mean, I don't have anxiety when I leave the home without my wallet, but I have anxiety when I leave without my phone.
Exactly.
So we're coming to our end of point here, and one of the things I can do here is opening up for questions. There is a tool there with the Q&A. Um, if you look on your control panel, we can type in an answer, or if you raise your hand, I will open up and we can take a few questions while we have a few minutes here. All right, got a question here in terms of the integration. Well, that integration again, we'll save a more in-depth conversation for for our integration series. But integration again, it's being able to connect in real time, via API to those different systems that we want to. Again, trying to deliver all these through various processes and different tools, it's essential to be able to provide that flow. And the way our architecture, the way it's designed, is to be agnostic. So whichever set of tools that the institution has in their ecosystem will be able to connect appropriately to draw information in there.
Yeah, Chuck, to that point, I don't know that we've worked with a bank yet that's had the exact same set of tools. I mean, every bank works differently. And so, being agnostic really allows you guys to connect all of your systems.
It does, and I think again, Michelle talked about this at the beginning in our approach, right? Obsessively thinking about what this experience looks like, and that place of humility is it's about you, the customer, the institution. So it's not about us funneling you one way or the other, or shackling you to a certain set of tools, but being able to work with you where you are. Again, Meredith said you may be at the start of your journey, or you may be a little bit further along, but where you are, we'll meet you there and help
Yep.
you in the in your transformation journey.
Yep.
So while we, yeah, okay, there's an additional question, and it's more of a general question here, wanting to learn more. So for everyone who's attending this, you will get a recording of this. And definitely you have our information so we can set up and have more in-depth discussions about your current situation, and to have a more in-depth demo as well about what this looks like and what this looks like for your institution. And again, that consultative approach is understanding your needs and where you go. And we often say that prescription without diagnosis and malpractice. So while we have this out of the box tool that is ready to go from day one, there is some nuance to every institution. While we like to think we're all very unique, there is a convergence of things, but in that there is uh, a I guess configuration that's necessary for how you deliver to your customers, and we'll talk about what that looks like and how that is designed appropriately. This joke here, what it looks like before and after COVID. This is this is a I guess an indication of that change, right? Going in before COVID, you walk in with a mask, it looks like you're about to rob the place. I'm calling the police. Now you walk in without a mask, is I'm calling the police, and the where the mask is has been changed. If this is analogous to change, to transformation, how it was before COVID and how COVID has accelerated this push for digitization. Did I get that right?
You got it.
Digitization. All right. Little tongue twister there. It's really understanding how we embrace change, how we employ the technologies at our disposal. It's not a displacement. The disruption is not a destruction phase, but we have the changing environment, the changing customer, but we also have these great tools now that we continue to deliver what we do at a much higher level and in a much better way to our customers. So we are at the end of our time here. Want to thank everyone for attending, for taking time
Yep.
out of your day. It's hard to go into granular detail for each institution, but we look forward to connecting with you all directly
Yep.
and understanding your situation.
Yep. Thank you all very much.